My mother loves a captive audience, but I never realized she also enjoyed a public execution until the wrapping paper hit the floor. Watching the other grandkids tear into brand new iPhone 17 Pro Max boxes, while my daughter sat empty-handed, wasn't an oversight. It was a message. When I asked why, Mom just smiled that thin, terrifying smile and said it wouldn't be appropriate. That was the moment I realized peace was no longer an option. The gravel crunched beneath the tires of my sedan, a sound that always signaled the beginning of a performance. I took a slow breath, holding it in my lungs for a count of 4, before exhaling the tension that had started building the moment we crossed the town line into Briar Glen. Beside me, my daughter, Maya, was humming a song she had learned in choir. Her face pressed against the glass as she looked at the manicured hedges and the sprawling oaks that lined my mother's street. Maya was 10 years old, bright-eyed, and blissfully unaware that entering this zip code required a suit of armor. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She was wearing the velvet dress I had ironed that morning, the one she felt fancy in. Her hair was pulled back in a neat braid, and she looked perfect. She looked happy. I needed to keep her that way. "Remember what we talked about," I said, keeping my voice light, as if we were discussing the weather. Maya stopped humming and looked at me with a grin that showed off the slight gap in her front teeth. "I know. Mom, sometimes grown-ups say weird things. We do not let it ruin our day." "That is right," I said, reaching back to squeeze her knee. "We are Teflon. Nothing sticks." She giggled at the word Teflon, a concept she only half understood, but she liked the idea of being slippery and invincible. I wished I felt the same. Returning to my childhood home always felt less like a family visit and more like walking onto a film set where I had not been given the script. My mother, Evelyn, did not host dinners. She curated experiences. Every napkin fold was a statement, every seating arrangement a strategy, and every gift a subtle negotiation of power. I parked the car behind my brother's massive SUV. The driveway was already full. My sister, Sarah, had parked her luxury sedan at an angle that took up 2 spots, a subconscious assertion of dominance that she probably was not even aware of. The house loomed above us, a sprawling colonial with white pillars and black shutters, looking exactly as it had for 30 years. It was beautiful, tasteful, and completely devoid of warmth. We walked up the path, and I could already hear the muted sounds of laughter from inside. I squeezed Maya's hand. "Ready?" I asked. "Ready," she said. The door swung open before I could knock. My mother stood there, framed by the warm, golden light of the foyer. She looked impeccable, as always. She was wearing a cashmere sweater in a shade of oatmeal that probably cost more than my first car. And her silver hair was coiffed into a style that defied wind and gravity. "Lillian," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You made it." "Hi, Mom," I said, leaning in for the requisite cheek kiss. She smelled of expensive gardenias and hairspray. "And Maya," my mother said, looking down. Her gaze flickered over Maya's dress, assessing the fabric, the fit, the shoes. For a second, I braced myself for a critique, but she just nodded. "You look very festive." "Thank you." "Grandma," Maya said, beaming, "Come in, come in." My mother ushered us into the hallway. "The others are in the living room. We are doing the appreciation dinner a bit early this year because, well, the schedule is just so packed in December." I knew that was not the real reason. My mother never did anything because of scheduling conflicts. She created the schedule, if we were here in mid-November for a holiday event. It was because she wanted something done, or said, or settled before the actual holidays arrived. The living room was a masterpiece of beige and cream. My siblings, David and Sarah, were lounging on the sofas with wine glasses in hand. Their spouses were chatting near the fireplace, but the energy in the room was centered on the floor, where the grandchildren were clustered. David had 2 sons, 12 and 14. Sarah had a daughter, 11. They were huddled together, whispering, their eyes darting toward a stack of silver boxes on the side table. "Lillian!" Sarah called out, waving her glass. "We were wondering if you were going to make it." Traffic was a nightmare. I lied. It had been a smooth drive, but admitting punctuality felt like a weakness in this house. I took a seat on the edge of an armchair, keeping Maya close to me for a moment before she drifted over to her cousins. I watched her approach them. She was a little tentative. My divorce 2 years ago had shifted the geography of the family. I was now the single mother, the one who had failed to keep the picture-perfect marriage. And by extension, Maya was the child of a broken home. My siblings treated us with a mix of pity and distance, as if divorce were contagious. The cousins, however, seemed welcoming enough. Sarah's daughter, Chloe, scooted over to make room for Maya. "Do you know what it is?" I heard Chloe whisper. "No," Maya whispered back. "What is what?" "The big gift. David's older son, Leo, said, Grandma said this year she's doing one big thing for all of us instead of lots of little things." I felt a prickle of unease at the back of my neck. My mother's gifts were never just gifts. They were scoreboards. They were tools. A check meant she was disappointed but obligated. Jewelry meant you were in favor but needed to be molded. Household appliances meant she thought you were failing at domestic life. I looked at the silver boxes on the table. There were 4 of them. I did a quick head count. Leo, Sam, Chloe, Maya, 4 grandchildren, 4 boxes. Okay, I told myself, it is fine. She got everyone the same thing. That is good. That is fair. Dinner was announced. Breaking my train of thought, we moved to the dining room, where the table was set with the good china, the stuff we were not allowed to touch when we were children. The meal was a roasted pork loin with a glaze that stuck to the teeth, accompanied by vegetables that had been roasted into submission. The conversation flowed in the usual channels. David talked about his investments and the new boat he was considering. Sarah complained about the contractors renovating her kitchen for the 3rd time in 5 years. I ate quietly, nodding at the right moments, offering vague updates about my job at the library when asked. "So, Lillian," my mother said from the head of the table, her voice cut through the low hum of chatter. "How are things? Financially?" The table went silent. This was her favorite sport, publicly auditing my stability. "We are doing well." "Mom," I said, keeping my tone even, "Maya is doing great in soccer. And I was just promoted to head of the archival department." "That is nice," she said, taking a sip of wine. "But libraries? Well, I just worry. With just one income, it must be tight." "We are fine," I repeated, firmer this time. She sighed, a small, tragic sound that suggested I was lying to protect my pride. "I just want to make sure you are being realistic. Lillian, that is all." I saw Maya look down at her plate, her shoulders hunching slightly. She understood the tone, even if she did not understand the details. I reached under the table and squeezed her hand again. "Let us not talk about money," David said, surprisingly coming to my rescue. Though his motive was likely boredom rather than defense, "Let us get to the good part. The kids are about to explode." My mother smiled, the tension dissolving instantly as she shifted roles from concerned matriarch to benevolent queen. "Yes, you are right. It is time." We moved back into the living room. The atmosphere had shifted. The air was thick with anticipation. The kids sat in a semicircle on the rug, looking up at my mother with wide, eager eyes. Even the teenagers, Leo and Sam, who usually practiced a carefully cultivated detachment, looked interested. My mother stood by the fireplace, the stack of silver boxes on the table beside her. She smoothed her skirt and looked at each of them. "I wanted to do something special this year," she began. "You are all getting older. You are becoming young adults, and I want you to have the best tools to succeed. I want you to be connected." She picked up the first box. It was sleek, wrapped in silver paper with a white ribbon. "Leo," she said. Leo scrambled up, took the box, and sat back down. He tore the paper. "Whoa," he breathed. "No way." He held up the box. It was unmistakable. The iPhone 17 Pro Max, titanium finish, the newest, most expensive model on the market, a device that cost nearly $2,000. Sam, my mother said, handing out the next one. Sam ripped his open. Yes, he shouted. This is sick. Thanks. Grandma? Chloe? She said. Sarah's daughter took her box, unwrapping it with slightly more precision but equal excitement. Oh my gosh, she squealed. The rose gold one. Thank you. Grandma. My heart was pounding. I looked at Maya. She was sitting on her knees, her hands clasped together, a huge smile on her face. She was clapping for her cousins, genuinely happy for them. She looked up at my mother, waiting for her name. My mother stood there, her hands empty. She looked at the group of children, smiling that benevolent smile. The silence stretched. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Leo was already tearing the plastic off his box. Sam was turning his phone on. Chloe was hugging her mother. Maya was still waiting. The smile on her face faltered. Just a fraction. She looked at the table. There were no more silver boxes. She looked at my mother again, confused. My mother clasped her hands together. All right, let us get a picture of the grandkids with their new treasures. Everyone squeeze in on the sofa. I felt the blood drain from my face. I felt cold, physically cold, as if the heating in the house had suddenly died. Maya sat frozen on the rug. She looked around, her eyes darting from her cousins holding their gleaming new phones to her empty lap. She blinked. Once, twice. Come on, Maya, Sarah called out cheerfully. Get in the picture. Maya stood up slowly. She walked over to the sofa and squeezed in next to Chloe. She forced a smile. It was a brave smile, a polite smile, the kind of smile I had taught her to use when she was disappointed. But I saw the wobble in her chin. I saw the way she tucked her empty hands behind her back, so they would not ruin the photo of the others holding their gifts. Smile, my mother commanded, holding up her own phone. Flash, flash, flash. Perfect, my mother said. Now, who wants dessert? I made the peppermint bark you all like. The room erupted into motion. The kids scattered. The parents started talking about data plans and cases. I sat there, unable to move. I was paralyzed by a mixture of shock and a rage so pure it felt like it could burn the house down. Maya walked over to me. She did not cry. She just stood close to my leg, leaning her weight against me. Mom? She whispered. I stood up. I took her hand. Why do you not go help Aunt Sarah get the cookies? I said, my voice sounding strange and hollow to my own ears. I just need to talk to Grandma for a second. Maya looked at me, her eyes searching mine. She knew something was wrong. But she nodded. Okay. I watched her walk into the dining room, her head held high, her dignity intact. I had never been prouder of her, and I had never hated my mother more. I turned and walked into the kitchen. My mother was at the island, arranging cookies on a crystal platter. She looked up as I entered, her expression placid. Hi, dear, she said. Did you try the... Where is it? I asked. I kept my voice low. The kitchen door was open, and I did not want to make a scene that Maya would hear. Where is what? She asked, pausing with a cookie in her hand. Maya's phone, I said. You gave Leo, Sam, and Chloe brand new iPhones. You gave them nothing less than the 17 Pro Max. Where is Maya's? My mother set the cookie down. She wiped her hands on a linen towel. Taking her time, she turned to face me, leaning her hip against the counter. Lillian, she said, her voice dropping to a sympathetic coo. I did not get Maya a phone. Why? I asked. My hands were shaking. I clenched them into fists at my sides. Because she does not need one. My mother said simply, She is 10. Chloe is 11. I said, Chloe is different. She said, Chloe is more mature, and Sarah and I discussed it. We felt she was ready for the responsibility. You did not discuss anything with me. I said, Well, I did not think I needed to, she said, adjusting the collar of her blouse. I know your situation. Lillian, I know you are trying to keep things simple. I did not want to burden you with a data plan you cannot afford. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Burden me? You just humiliated her. You made her sit there and watch her cousins get gifts while she got nothing. In front of everyone. Oh, stop, she said, waving a hand dismissively. You are being dramatic. Maya is fine. She is a sweet girl. She understands that things are not always equal. Things are not always equal? I repeated. This was not random chance. Mother, you planned this. You bought 4 boxes worth of wrapping paper but only 3 phones. You sat them in a circle. You staged a photo. It wouldn't be appropriate, she said, cutting me off. Her eyes hardened, the warmth vanishing completely. What wouldn't be appropriate? I asked. Treating your grandchildren equally? Giving a child like Maya that kind of technology? She said. I froze. A child like Maya? What is that supposed to mean? I asked. She sighed, looking at me with that pitying expression again. You know what I mean. Lillian, she is a little sensitive. She struggles to focus. I did not think a smartphone was the right thing for her. It would be a distraction. I was thinking of her well-being. That is a lie. I said, Maya is on the honor roll. She is the most focused kid I know. Lillian, please, she hissed. Keep your voice down. You are going to ruin the evening for everyone else. I stared at her. I looked at this woman who had raised me, this woman who valued optics over human beings, and I realized there was no winning this argument. She had an answer for everything. If I pushed, I was crazy. If I yelled, I was unstable. If I cried, I was weak. She wanted me to cause a scene. She wanted me to storm out and scream so she could look at David and Sarah and say, See? I told you she was volatile. I took a deep breath. I uncurled my fists. I am not going to ruin the evening. I said, my voice deadly calm. But we are leaving. Now? She asked, raising an eyebrow. But we haven't had dessert. Maya and I have to go. I said. I turned and walked out of the kitchen before she could say another word. I went into the dining room. Maya was standing by the table, holding a napkin. She looked up at me. Hey, Bug. I said, I am sorry. But I just remembered I have that early meeting tomorrow and we need to get back. Can we pack some cookies to go? Maya looked at me. She saw the tightness in my jaw, but she played along. Sure, Mom. We wrapped 3 cookies in a napkin. We said our goodbyes. David and Sarah barely looked up from their kids' new phones. Bye, Lillian, Sarah called out. Drive safe. My mother did not come to the door. We walked to the car in silence. The cold air felt good on my face, stripping away the suffocating scent of gardenias. I buckled Maya in. I got into the driver's seat. I started the engine and backed out of the driveway, not breathing fully until the house was in the rearview mirror, shrinking into the darkness. We drove for 10 minutes in silence. The only sound was the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the heater kicking on. I glanced at Maya. She was looking out the window, watching the streetlights blur by. I am sorry about the phone, I said. She shrugged, not looking at me. It is okay. I do not need a phone. It is not okay. I said, Grandma should have. Mom? She interrupted me. Yeah, baby? She turned her head. Her face was illuminated by the passing lights, pale and small. Did I do something wrong? She asked. The question hit me like a physical blow to the chest. It was soft, quiet, and absolutely devastating. No, I said, my voice cracking. No, Maya, you did absolutely nothing wrong. Is it because I got a B in math last quarter? She asked. Or because I lost my mittens? Oh, honey, no. I said. I reached over and grabbed her hand, squeezing it tight. This has nothing to do with you, Grandma. Grandma just made a mistake. A big, rude mistake. You are perfect. Do you hear me? You are perfect. She nodded, but I could tell she did not believe me. Logic does not work on a 10-year-old who has just been publicly ostracized. She was trying to make sense of the world, and the only explanation her brain could offer was that she was somehow lacking, that she was less than her cousins. I felt tears prick my eyes, hot and angry. This was what my mother did. She did not just hurt you. She made you believe you deserved it. She planted a seed of doubt that grew into a forest of insecurity. She had done it to me for 33 years, and now she was doing it to my daughter. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "I will buy you a phone." I wanted to say, "I will drive to the store right now and buy you the biggest, most expensive phone they have," but I knew that wasn't the point. It wasn't about the object. It was about the exclusion. It was about the message sent to the entire family. Maya is not one of us. Lillian is not one of us. We drove the rest of the way home in a heavy silence. I tried to put on music, but Maya asked for quiet. When we got to our apartment, she went straight to her room to put on her pajamas. I hung up my coat in the hallway. As I did, my hand brushed against something in the pocket. I frowned. I had checked my pockets before we left. They had been empty. I reached in and pulled out a piece of paper. It was folded into a sharp, perfect square. I unfolded it. It was a note, written on my mother's personalized stationery. The cream-colored paper was heavy and textured. Her handwriting was elegant, looping, and precise. "Lillian, let us discuss your signature this week. It is time. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. Love, Mom." I stared at the note. My stomach dropped. My signature. Suddenly, the pieces clicked together. The early holiday, the sudden generosity toward the other grandchildren, the pointed questions about my finances, the exclusion of Maya. It wasn't just cruelty, it was leverage. She was squeezing me. She knew I was proud. She knew I was protective. And she knew I was alone. She was showing me exactly what it looked like when I was on her bad side. And she was showing me exactly what she could give to the people who stayed on her good side. I looked at the closed door of Maya's bedroom. I thought about her asking if she had done something wrong because she lost her mittens. My mother was not just being mean. She was negotiating. She was holding my daughter's happiness hostage in exchange for something she wanted me to sign. I crumpled the note in my fist. I walked into the kitchen and threw it into the trash can. I stood there, breathing hard in the quiet of my apartment. She thought this would break me. She thought that by humiliating my child, she would force me to come crawling back, begging for inclusion, ready to sign whatever paper she put in front of me just to make the pain stop. She had made a miscalculation. She had forgotten that I was the one who left. She had forgotten that I had already survived her. And she had definitely forgotten that while I might tolerate her treatment of me, I would burn the world down before I let her treat my daughter like collateral damage. I went to the fridge and poured myself a glass of cold water. I drank it in one long gulp. Then I walked to Maya's room. I opened the door a crack. She was in bed, curled up under her duvet, breathing deeply. She was already asleep. I watched her for a long time. "It is time." The note had said, "Yes." I thought, "It is, but not for what she thinks." I closed the door silently. I went to the living room, sat down on my thrift store sofa, and stared at the wall. The image of the empty silver space on my mother's table burned in my mind. She wanted a fight? She had one, but she wasn't going to fight the scared little girl she raised. She was going to fight the mother she had just created. I pulled out my phone and opened my calendar. I typed in a new event for tomorrow morning. Call lawyer. Then I sat back and waited for the sun to come up. I had a feeling I wasn't going to sleep tonight. The game had started, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to play by her rules. I was going to rewrite them. The washing machine was entering its spin cycle, a low, rhythmic thrumming that vibrated through the floorboards of my kitchen. I stood at the counter, sorting through a stack of work emails on my laptop, but my mind was nowhere near the archives of the county library. I was back in my mother's living room, watching the scene replay on an agonizing loop, the smile, the pause, the pivot to the camera. I folded a pair of Maya's jeans, smoothing the denim with aggressive precision. Monday morning usually brought relief, the return of routine, but today the silence of the apartment felt heavy. It was the silence of a held breath. In the cold light of day, the humiliation of the dinner did not feel like a social blunder. It felt architectural. My mother had constructed that moment. She had bought the phones, wrapped them, and likely rehearsed the distribution. She had calculated exactly where Maya would be sitting and how the other grandchildren would react. Why? I put the laptop down and picked up a towel. It was not just cruelty. My mother was cruel. Yes, but she was rarely inefficient. Cruelty for cruelty's sake was messy. My mother preferred transactions. She did things to get things. The exclusion was a lever. She was pulling it to see if I would break. I needed a reality check. I needed someone who had been in that room to tell me I was not crazy, even though I knew, deep down, that asking for validation in my family was like asking a shark for a life raft. I picked up my phone and dialed David. My older brother answered on the second ring. His voice clipped. He was likely in his office, surrounded by glass walls and the hum of high finance capability. "Lillian," he said, "I am in between meetings. Is everything okay?" "I am fine," I said, leaning against the counter. "I just wanted to talk about last night." There was a pause on the line. A distinct, heavy pause that told me he had been expecting this call and had already decided how to handle it. "Look, Lil," he sighed. "Mom is pretty upset." "She is upset?" I repeated, my voice rising despite my best efforts to keep it level. "She humiliated my daughter in front of the entire family. David, she gave everyone a $2,000 device and gave Maya nothing, and she is the one who is upset? You are blowing it out of proportion." David said. His tone was practiced, the soothing baritone of a man used to managing volatile assets. "Mom didn't mean it like that. She was trying to be practical. She honestly thought a phone was too much for Maya right now. You know how she is about screen time. She gave a phone to Chloe." I said, "Chloe is 11, Maya is 10. Do not insult my intelligence by pretending this is about pediatric screen time guidelines. It is not just the age," David said, his voice lowering. "It is the situation. Mom feels like she needs to be careful with you guys. She did not want to step on your toes financially. She thought if she gave Maya something that expensive, you would feel obligated or awkward because you couldn't reciprocate." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound, so to protect me from feeling awkward. "She decided to make my child feel invisible? That is the logic we are going with? Don't start a thing." "Lillian," he snapped, his patience evaporating. "Seriously, we had a nice night until you rushed out. The kids were confused. Just let it go. It is a phone. I will buy Maya a phone if it is that big of a deal." I closed my eyes. There it was, the family reflex. Smooth over the cracks, pay off the inconvenience, and paint the person pointing out the problem as the problem itself. "It is not about the phone, David," I said quietly. "It is about the fact that she used a gift exchange to make a public statement about who belongs and who doesn't." "You are exhausting." "Lillian," he said, "just call her. Apologize for leaving like that. Fix it so we can do Christmas without tension. I have to go." The line went dead. I stared at the screen. "Apologize for leaving." I put the phone down on the counter. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer, suffocating weight of the gaslighting. They wanted me to apologize for bleeding on the carpet after she stabbed me. I finished the laundry in a fugue state. I answered 3 emails about archive preservation techniques without really reading them. At 2:00, I picked up Maya from school. She was cheerful, talking about a science project involving lima beans. She did not mention the phone. She did not mention her grandmother. She was resilient, far more than I was. But I knew that resilience had a shelf life. I could not let this fester. If I stayed silent, my mother would take it as submission. If I screamed, she would take it as instability. I needed to be something else. I needed to be cold. I sent a text to my mother. "Meet me at the Daily Grind in Cedarbrook Plaza. Tomorrow at 10. We need to clear the air." She replied 3 minutes later. "I will bring the paperwork. It is time we settled things." The next morning, the cafe was bustling. The Daily Grind was neutral territory. Too noisy for a scene. Too public for tears. I arrived 15 minutes early and secured a table in the back corner, facing the door. I wanted to see her coming. My mother arrived exactly at 10 o'clock. She wore a camel hair coat and sunglasses, looking like a celebrity trying to be incognito while desperately wanting to be recognized. She spotted me, removed her sunglasses, and glided through the tables. She did not hug me. She sat down, placed her leather handbag on the empty chair, and signaled a waiter with a flick of her wrist. "Earl Grey tea," she said. "Hot water on the side." She turned to me. Her face was a mask of polite concern. "You look tired." "Lillian." "Are you sleeping?" "I am sleeping fine," I said. "Thank you for meeting me." She sighed, smoothing the tablecloth. "I am glad you reached out. I hate this tension. You know I only want what is best for everyone." I decided to skip the warm-up. "Why did you exclude Maya?" I asked. My mother blinked. She reached into her large tote bag and pulled out a thick blue folder. She placed it on the table between us. "We can discuss the electronics later." She said dismissively, "First, we need to handle this. I have been trying to get you to focus on this for months, but you have been so distant." I looked at the folder. It was labeled Hearthstone Community Fund, Administrative Updates. "What is this?" I asked. "It is just some housekeeping," she said, opening the folder. She slid a stack of documents toward me. "You know your father left certain assets in a trust structure. It has become incredibly cumbersome to manage. The fees are high. The reporting is a nightmare. I have worked with the family attorney to streamline everything into a new entity." I looked at the papers. They were dense, filled with single-spaced legal jargon. I saw phrases like revocable living trust, sole trustee designation, and discretionary distribution. "Streamline how?" I asked. She tapped a page with her manicured fingernail. "Here, this just consolidates the decision-making. Instead of having to get signatures from you and your siblings for every little withdrawal or investment change, this appoints me as the primary administrator of the Hearthstone Fund. It allows me to move quickly to protect the principal." I scanned the paragraph she was pointing to. "The primary trustee shall have sole and absolute discretion regarding the timing, amount, and manner of any distributions to beneficiaries. The primary trustee may, at their sole discretion, withhold distributions for any reason deemed appropriate." I felt a cold drop in my stomach. "This isn't housekeeping." "Mom," I said, looking up, "this changes the control. Right now. The trust requires consensus for major changes. This would give you total control." She smiled. A tight, patient smile. "It is for your benefit. Lillian, you do not understand these markets. David agrees it is the best move. He has already signed. David has plenty of his own money." I said, "He can afford to sign away control." "This is not about signing away control," she said, her voice sharpening. "It is about trusting your mother. Do you think I would steal from you?" I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had staged a public humiliation for a 10-year-old less than 48 hours ago. "I think you use money to control people," I said. Her eyes narrowed. She leaned back, crossing her arms. "This is exactly why we need this structure," she said. "You are emotional. You are paranoid. You make everything a battle. If I leave the trust as it is, you will gridlock every decision we try to make." I pushed the papers back toward her. "I am not signing this." My mother stared at me. Her face went through a rapid series of contortions. First, her eyes welled up with tears. She pressed a hand to her chest. "I cannot believe this," she whispered, loud enough for the table next to us to hear. "After everything I have done, I paid for your wedding. I paid for your divorce lawyer. I have practically raised that child for you." "You did not pay for my divorce lawyer," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "I paid for him out of my savings. And you see Maya once a month. You have not raised her." She dropped the tears instantly. The sadness vanished, replaced by a flash of indignation. "You are ungrateful," she hissed. "You have always been the difficult one. Your father knew it, too. That is why he set things up the way he did. He knew you would need guidance. My father wanted us to be independent." I said. She laughed, a dry, dismissive sound. "Your father wanted peace. And right now, you are the one destroying it." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to an icy whisper. Let me be clear. Lillian, the Hearthstone Fund covers more than just future inheritance. It covers the educational stipends. It covers the medical supplements. It covers the kinds of extras that families provide for their grandchildren. I stared at her. The connection clicked into place. The phones. I said. She picked up her tea, blowing on it gently. The phones are a benefit, she said. They are a gift from the family resources. If you are not part of the team, if you cannot cooperate with the family's administrative needs, then it becomes very difficult to justify extending those benefits to your branch. I felt like I had been slapped. You are ransoming my daughter's inclusion. I said, you withheld a gift from a child to pressure me into signing over control of the trust. I am avoiding mixed messages, she said smoothly. If you cannot trust me to manage the family's future, why should I trust you with the family's present resources? It wouldn't be appropriate. There was that word again, appropriate. What does that mean? I asked, leaning over the table. What exactly defines appropriate for you, Mother? Because from where I am sitting, it looks like you are punishing a 10-year-old because you want her mother to shut up and sign a check. She set the cup down hard. Tea sloshed over the rim. It means, she said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage, that your daughter is in a precarious position. She has a complicated history. Lillian, you know that. I recoiled. I do not know that. What history? She is 10. She has certain vulnerabilities, my mother said vaguely, waving her hand. Questions about her background. Questions about her father. Giving her a device like that. Giving her unfettered access to the internet and communication. It encourages questions. It opens doors that should stay closed. I stared at her, baffled. Maya's father was my ex-husband. Mark. He was an accountant. He was boring. He lived 3 towns over. There was no mystery. What are you talking about? I asked. Mark is her father. My mother just looked at me. She held my gaze for a long moment, her eyes flat and unreadable. Is he? She said softly. The world tilted. I sat back in my chair. The noise of the cafe rushing back in. The grinder. The chatter. The clatter of ceramic. Are you implying? I started, but I couldn't even finish the sentence. It was insane. It was a lie so bold, so reckless, that it took my breath away. I am not implying anything, she said, gathering the papers and sliding them back into the folder. I am simply saying that families have narratives, Lillian, and some narratives are fragile. I am trying to protect Maya. I am trying to protect you. But you have to work with me. She stood up, buttoning her coat. I will leave these copies with you, she said, tapping the folder. Read them, really read them, and think about what kind of future you want for your daughter. One where she is taken care of, or one where she is on the outside looking in. She walked away without looking back. I sat there for 20 minutes. Staring at the blue folder, I felt sick. She had just suggested, with zero evidence, that my daughter's parentage was in question. It was a psychological flashbang, designed to disorient me, to make me doubt my own reality. I drove home on autopilot. I needed to pick up Maya. I needed to be normal. But the normality of Briar Glen felt like a thin veneer over a rotting structure. That evening, I made spaghetti. Maya sat at the counter, doing her homework. The domestic scene felt fragile, like it could shatter if I put a fork down too hard. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text message. It was from Julie, an old family friend who had been at the dinner. She was Sarah's godmother, a woman who prided herself on being the neighborhood historian. Hey, sweetie. The text read, I just heard about the dinner. Your mom is saying you stormed out and scared the kids. Just checking you're okay. She's really worried about your stress levels. I stared at the screen. Stormed out. Scared the kids. Stress levels. The narrative was already setting like concrete. I wasn't the victim of a power play. I was the unstable daughter who had caused a scene. My mother was the concerned matriarch, wringing her hands over my mental state. I did not reply. There was no point. Anything I said would be screenshotted and forwarded. Mom? I looked up. Maya was chewing on the end of her pencil. She looked small in her oversized sweatshirt. "Is Grandma mad at me?" she asked. I put down the wooden spoon. I walked around the counter and knelt down so I was eye level with her. "No," I said firmly. "Grandma is not mad at you." "Then why didn't she get me a phone?" Maya asked. Her voice was small, logical, and heartbreaking. "Because Grandma has some weird rules about electronics." I lied. "It is a grown-up thing. It is complicated. But it has 0% to do with you being a good kid. You are the best kid." Maya looked at me. She had my eyes, but she had a wisdom that I was only just beginning to learn. "She is mad at you, isn't she?" she said. I sighed. I couldn't lie to her completely. She was too smart. "We are having a disagreement," I admitted, "but that is between me and her. It is not your job to worry about it." Maya nodded slowly. "Okay." I stood up and kissed her forehead. "But listen to me. We are going to take a little break from visiting Grandma for a while. Just until things settle down, okay?" She looked relieved. "Okay." I went back to the spaghetti. But my appetite was gone. No more unsupervised visits. That was the line. I would not let my mother pour poison into my daughter's ear when I wasn't looking. After Maya went to sleep, I couldn't sit still. The conversation at the cafe was gnawing at me. Hearthstone Community Fund, sole discretion, complicated history. My mother was moving pieces on a board I couldn't see. I went into my bedroom closet and pulled down a plastic tote bin from the top shelf. It was labeled Important Docs/Old. It was the graveyard of my past bureaucracy. Tax returns from 5 years ago, my divorce decree, old car titles. I dragged the bin to the living room and sat on the floor. I didn't know what I was looking for. A lie? A truth? A financial trail? I started sorting. I made piles, bank statements, legal correspondence. I found the file for my divorce. I flipped through the financials. My ex-husband, Mark, had been meticulous. Every asset listed, every debt accounted for. There was no mention of any trust fund for Maya, no mention of Hearthstone. I kept digging. I went further back. Papers from when my father died 7 years ago. My father, Robert, had been the quiet one. He was a corporate attorney who spent his life mitigating risk. He loved my mother, or at least he endured her, but he had always looked at me with a specific kind of sadness, like he knew what I was up against. I found a manila envelope at the bottom of the bin. It was thick and dusty. On the front, in my father's cramped, angular handwriting, it said, "For Lillian, important." I frowned. I had seen this envelope before. I remembered packing it when I moved out of the house after the funeral. I had been so overwhelmed with grief and the logistics of the estate that I had thrown it in a box and told myself I would deal with it later. Later had turned into 7 years. My hands shook slightly as I opened the clasp. Inside, there was a smaller white envelope and a heavy brass key. I held up the key. It was old-fashioned, stamped with a number, 402, and the logo of Briar Glen Mutual Bank. I opened the white envelope. There was a single sheet of yellow legal pad paper. My father's handwriting scrawled across it in blue ink. "Dearest Lillian, if you are reading this, 2 things have likely happened. First, I am gone. Second, your mother has done something to make you feel like you do not belong." I stopped reading. The breath caught in my throat. He knew, even back then. He knew, "I love your mother, but I know her flaws. She views family as a hierarchy, not a circle. I have tried to structure the estate to protect everyone, but legal documents can be changed, and wills can be contested. She is very persuasive. I kept some things separate, not to hide them, but to safeguard them. In case you ever needed a parachute, or the truth, go to the bank, Box 402. The lease is prepaid for 20 years. Remember, you are my daughter. Do not let her rewrite you. Love, Dad." I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by the debris of my bureaucratic life, holding the letter. Tears finally came, hot and fast. If your mother ever makes you feel like you don't belong. She had done exactly that. She had done it with a smile and a silver box and a cup of Earl Grey tea. But she hadn't counted on Robert Henderson. She thought she was playing chess against a single mother who was tired and broke. She didn't know I had just been handed a queen. I looked at the key in my hand. It was heavy, cold, and real. The because in my mother's sentence, because it wouldn't be appropriate, was a lie. The real because was hidden in a safe deposit box at Briar Glen Mutual Bank. I wiped my eyes. I looked at the clock. It was midnight. Tomorrow, I would go to the bank, and then I would find out what my mother was so terrified of me knowing. Briar Glen Mutual Bank was a fortress of silence and marble, a place that smelled of old paper and older money. I stood at the check-in desk, my hands resting on the polished counter to hide the fact that they were trembling. It was not the fear of being caught that made me shake. It was the hollow, vibrating ache of grief. It had been 7 years since I walked into this building, and the last time I was here, my father had been standing beside me, depositing a check for my college tuition, making a joke about how education was the only investment that did not depreciate. Now, I was here to dig up his ghosts. I have a safe deposit box key. I told the clerk, number 402. The clerk, a woman with reading glasses perched on a nose that had likely smelled fear before, nodded efficiently. She checked my identification, typed something into her terminal, and then summoned a guard. Right this way. Ms. Henderson. The vault was cool, the air conditioned to a crisp dryness to preserve the documents of the wealthy. The guard used his master key. I inserted the heavy brass key my father had left me, and together we slid the long metal drawer out of the wall. "I will give you some privacy," the guard said, pointing me toward a small viewing room with a single table and a lamp that buzzed with a low, electric hum. I closed the door. I sat down. The metal box sat on the table like an unexploded ordnance. I took a breath that rattled in my chest, unlatched the lid, and flipped it open. It was not full of gold bars or diamond necklaces. It was filled with paper. There was a slim black binder, a stack of envelopes, and a small velvet pouch. I reached for the binder first. Inside, the documents were organized with the meticulous precision my father was known for. There were tabs, dates, and highlighted sections. I flipped to the first section, labeled Asset Transfers, 2012. I began to read, and as I did, the floor seemed to drop out from under my chair. The documents were bank transfers, huge sums, $50,000 here, $20,000 there, moved from joint accounts into accounts solely in my mother's name, or into the Hearthstone entity she had tried to force me to sign over just yesterday. I remembered 2012. I was 20 years old. That was the year my mother had told us that things were tight. She had cut back on our holiday gifts, canceled the family vacation to the Cape, and told me she couldn't help with my grad school deposit because the market was volatile. She had lied. According to these sheets, she had moved nearly $250,000 into a private holding company in a span of 3 months. She hadn't been losing money. She had been hiding it. I turned the page. There was a legal memo, drafted by my father, but never filed. It was a draft for a trust amendment. The intention of the Henderson Family Trust is to provide a safety net for all grandchildren, regardless of parental standing or marital status of the parents. No trustee shall have the power to withhold distributions based on personal grievance or behavioral compliance. Transparency is the condition of authority. He had known. He had seen her using money as a leash, and he had tried to write a law that would cut it. I felt a wave of nausea. My mother had presented the Hearthstone update as a way to streamline things, to honor my father's legacy. In reality, it was a direct violation of his final wishes. She was trying to erase the safeguards he had built, because those safeguards prevented her from picking favorites. I closed the binder, my heart pounding against my ribs. I reached for the velvet pouch. Inside was a flash drive and a single photograph. I turned the photo over. It was an old Polaroid, the colors fading to a soft, nostalgic orange. It showed my father, younger, his hair still dark, standing on a dock I did not recognize. He was holding a baby. Me. I knew it was me because of the birthmark on the baby's leg. A small strawberry shape just above the knee, but the woman standing next to him was not my mother. She was beautiful, with wild, curly hair and a smile that looked genuine. Unpracticed, she was wearing a simple sundress, her hand resting familiarly on my father's arm. She looked at the camera with a warmth that my mother, for all her social graces, had never possessed. I stared at the woman's face. There was something familiar in the shape of her eyes, the set of her jaw. I turned the photo over, in my father's handwriting, scribbled in blue ink. Truth matters more than comfort. I sat there for a long time, the buzzing of the lamp the only sound in the room. Who was she? Was she a friend? A nanny? A mistress? And why did my father think this photo was important enough to lock in a vault for a decade? I put the photo back in the pouch. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I dug further into the box and found a business card stapled to a folded letter. Arthur Abernathy. Esquire, Estate Planning and Family Law. I knew the name. He was my father's old mentor, a man who had retired years ago. I pulled out my phone. I didn't care that I was in a bank vault. I dialed the number handwritten on the back of the card, labeled Direct Line. It rang 4 times. Hello? A voice rasped. It was old, brittle, but sharp. Mr. Abernathy? I asked. This is Lillian Henderson, Robert Henderson's daughter. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence that stretched across the line. Lillian, he said finally, I have been wondering if you would ever call. You knew about the box? I asked. I helped him pack it. Mr. Abernathy said. He was worried. Lillian, toward the end, he was very worried. About what? About Evelyn, he said. He loved her, you understand, but he knew she had a need for control. He was terrified she would use the estate to curate the family like she curates her garden, pruning the parts she didn't like. She is trying to change the trust. I said, she wants me to sign over sole discretion to her. Do not sign it, he said. His voice lost its rasp and became commanding. Under no circumstances do you sign that. The current structure requires consensus for a reason. If you give her sole discretion, she can legally cut you off. She can cut your daughter off. She already has. I said, in spirit. Anyway, Lillian, listen to me. He said, your father left that box because he knew a day would come when you would need leverage. The documents in there prove she breached her fiduciary duty as a spouse years ago. If she pushes you, you have the ammunition to remove her as trustee entirely. And the photo? I asked. The woman? Mr. Abernathy went silent again. That, he said softly, is a question I cannot answer. Robert made me promise that you would find that out on your own, if you ever needed to. But I will tell you this. Evelyn knows about the photo, and she is terrified of it. I hung up. I sat in the vault for another 10 minutes, simply breathing. My mother wasn't just mean, she was compromised. She was sitting on a throne built on secrets, and she was terrified that I was going to pull the loose thread that unraveled the whole tapestry. I left the bank with the binder and the photo tucked deep inside my purse. I felt heavier, but also steadier. I was no longer fighting a fog. I was fighting a map. I had just pulled into my driveway when my phone buzzed. It was David. Dinner tonight? Just us. Sarah is coming too. Mom wants to do a reset. No drama. Just family. My treat? The chop house at 7. I stared at the screen. A reset. It was a trap. I knew it was a trap. In the Henderson family, a reset meant we are going to corner you until you agree to our version of reality. But I had the binder now. I had the key. I'll be there. I typed back. I called a babysitter for Maya, a neighbor I trusted implicitly. I put on my best blazer, the one that made me feel like an armor-clad warrior, and I drove to the chop house. The restaurant was dimly lit, smelling of seared steak and expensive bourbon. The hostess led me to a private room in the back, the kind reserved for corporate mergers and illicit affairs. David and Sarah were already there, and my mother, but there was someone else. Sitting next to my mother was a man I did not recognize. He was in his 50s, wearing a suit that cost more than my car, with silver hair and a smile that looked like it had been focus grouped. "Lillian," David said. "Standing up? Glad you made it?" He gestured to the empty chair. "This is Julian Sterling," my mother said smoothly. She didn't look at me. She was busy adjusting her napkin. "He is a family advisor. He has been helping David and me with the administrative transition." I didn't sit down immediately. I looked at Mr. Sterling. I thought this was a family dinner. I said, "Mr." Sterling stood up and extended a hand. His grip was dry and firm. "It is Lillian," he said. His voice was a soothing baritone, designed to lower blood pressure. "I am just here to facilitate. We want to make sure everyone feels heard." I sat down. I felt the air in the room shift. It wasn't a dinner. It was an intervention. We ordered drinks. The waiter vanished. The door clicked shut. "So," David started, swirling his scotch, "we want to move past the other night. It got heated. We all want the same thing. Peace. I want my daughter to be treated with respect." I said, "Of course, Mr." Sterling said. "And that is exactly why we are here. Evelyn," he nodded deferentially to my mother, "is deeply committed to fairness. But fairness requires structure." He opened a leather portfolio and slid a single sheet of paper across the polished wood table. "We have drafted a proposal," he said. I looked at it. It was titled Family Communication and Benefit Guidelines. "What is this?" I asked. "It is a path forward," Sarah said. Leaning in, she looked tired, her eyes darting between me and our mother. "Lil, just listen. It is a good deal. Mr." Sterling cleared his throat. "The proposal is simple. We formalize the updates to the Hearthstone Fund. You sign the administrative transfer. In exchange, the family agrees to a retroactive gifting schedule." He paused for effect. "Maya will receive the iPhone," he said, "and a generous contribution to her college savings plan. Immediately." I stared at him. Then I looked at my mother. She was sipping her wine, her eyes fixed on the centerpiece. "You are buying my signature with a phone." I said, "Mr." Sterling smiled indulgently. "We are resolving a conflict." The phone was withheld because of concerns about stability. If you sign the agreement, you demonstrate a commitment to the family's stability. Therefore, the concern is alleviated. The benefit is released. It was a logic loop so perverse it was almost impressive. "And if I don't sign?" I asked. "Mr." Sterling sighed. "Then we have to assume that you are not interested in the family's collective well-being, and that creates distance. It would be very difficult to justify including your branch in future discretionary distributions if you are actively obstructing the administration of the estate." I looked at the paper. Communication guidelines. I scanned the bullet points. Beneficiaries agree to keep family financial matters private. Beneficiaries agree to refrain from disparaging the trustee. Beneficiaries agree to adhere to all aesthetic and social standards set forth for family gatherings. It was a gag order. "You want me to sell my daughter's dignity for a phone and a check," I said. "You want me to sign a paper that says I will never question my mother again, and in exchange, you will stop bullying my 10-year-old. Lillian, do not use words like bullying." My mother snapped. She finally looked at me, her eyes hard. "We are trying to help you. You are a single mother. You are struggling. We are offering you security. I am not struggling." I said, "I am working. There is a difference." David slammed his hand on the table. "Just sign the damn paper." "Lillian, do you have any idea how complicated this is for us? Mom is trying to protect the assets. If you keep dragging your feet, you are going to cost us all money in legal fees." "Is that what this is about?" I asked. "Money? It is about legacy," my mother cried out. Her voice cracked, revealing a jagged edge of panic beneath the polish. "It is about keeping this family together. It is about making sure we do not look like a disaster to the outside world." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. It wasn't just about control. She was hiding something. She was terrified of what would happen if I had the power to ask questions. I pushed the paper back across the table. "No," I said. "Mr." Sterling blinked. I beg your pardon? I said no. I repeated, I am not signing the Hearthstone updates, and I am not accepting your conditional offer for the phone. Lillian, be reasonable. Sarah pleaded. Maya wants the phone. Just do it for her. I am doing this for her. I said, I am teaching her that she cannot be bought. I stood up. My legs felt steady. You can keep the phone. I said to my mother, you can keep the trust fund, but you will not use my child as a bargaining chip. If you want to have a relationship with Maya, it happens on my terms. No more bribes, no more secrets, and certainly no more public humiliations. My mother stood up too. She was shaking. You are making a mistake, she said. Her voice was low, trembling with a dark, ugly energy. You think you are being noble, but you are being selfish. Selfish? I laughed. I am the only one here not trying to profit off a 10-year-old. You do not understand, she shouted. The mask slipped completely. Her face twisted into a snarl of desperation. You do not understand what is at stake. What is at stake? Mother, I asked, why are you so terrified of me having a say in this trust? Because you do not belong in it, she screamed. The room went dead silent. David froze. Sarah's mouth dropped open. Even Mr. Sterling looked uncomfortable. My mother stood there, her chest heaving. She realized what she had said. She blinked rapidly, trying to pull the mask back on. She stammered, forcing a terrible, rigid smile. You do not belong in the financial management side. You are artistic. You are emotional. You do not have the head for it. She laughed, a high, brittle sound. It is a bloodlines thing, you know? The Henderson side was always better with numbers. You take after, well, you are just different. Bloodlines. The word hung in the air like smoke. She had said the Henderson side as if it were a separate entity from me, as if I were not a Henderson. I thought of the photo in my purse, the woman on the dock, the baby with the birthmark. I looked at my mother. I saw the terror behind her eyes. She hadn't just misspoken. She had almost confessed. I looked at David and Sarah. They were looking at the table. Uncomfortable but not questioning. They were used to her outbursts. They were used to her rewriting reality. But I wasn't. Not anymore. I think I understand perfectly, I said quietly. I turned and walked out of the room. I walked through the restaurant, past the happy diners, past the bar. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Because you do not belong in it. She didn't mean the trust. She meant the family. I drove home, my mind racing. If I wasn't her daughter, then who was I? And if I wasn't her daughter, that explained everything. The coldness, the criticism, the way she had always looked at me like I was a stain on her perfect tablecloth. It explained why she hated Maya. Maya was the proof of the bloodline she despised. I pulled into my driveway. The porch light was on. There was a package on the doormat, a padded envelope. I picked it up. It had my mother's return address. She must have mailed it yesterday, before the dinner, just in case the negotiation failed, or maybe to soften me up. I walked inside and opened it on the kitchen counter. Inside was a tablet, not an iPad, not a Samsung. It was a generic brand I had never heard of, in a plastic blister pack that looked like it belonged in a discount bin at a gas station. There was a note taped to the front, for Maya. For learning, not for showing off. Hopefully she can use this for her homework. I stared at the cheap gray plastic. She had given the other grandchildren $2,000 devices made of titanium and glass. She had sent my daughter a $50 piece of junk that would probably break in a month. It wasn't a gift. It was an insult. It was a reminder of our place. Here's the scrap for the mongrel. Mom? I spun around. Maya was standing in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. She had woken up. I quickly tried to hide the package, but she had already seen it. Is that for me? She asked, her eyes lighting up. I hesitated. I wanted to throw it in the trash. I wanted to smash it with a hammer. But I looked at her hopeful face. Yeah, baby, I said, my voice thick. It's from Grandma. Maya walked over. She looked at the cheap plastic package. She didn't see the insult. She didn't know the market value. She just saw a tablet. "Cool," she said. She hugged me. "Thanks, Mom." "Can I open it tomorrow?" "Yeah," I whispered. "Tomorrow." She went back to bed. Happy. I stood there, clutching the edge of the counter. The rage that filled me was not hot. It was cold. It was absolute. My phone rang. It was late. Too late for casual calls. I looked at the ID. Mark, my ex-husband. I answered, "Mark, is everything okay?" "Lillian," he said. He sounded breathless, like he had been pacing. "I didn't want to call you this late, but this is weird." "What is it?" "I got a call today," he said, "from a guy claiming to be doing a credit audit for some trust thing. He started asking questions about our divorce settlement, about your income, about whether I knew of any undisclosed assets you might have." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to go to hell," Mark said. I hung up. "But Lil," the way he was asking, he wasn't looking for money. He was looking for dirt. He asked if you had ever been treated for emotional instability. He asked if there were any incidents with Maya that weren't documented. I closed my eyes. The narrative. She was building a case. She was going to try to paint me as unfit. "Who was it?" I asked. He didn't say. Mark said, but the caller ID said, "Sterling Associates, Mr. Sterling, the family advisor." He wasn't an advisor. He was a fixer. He was a hitman in a three-piece suit. "Your mom is digging." "Lillian," Mark said, his voice serious. "She is looking for something to use against you. Watch your back." I hung up. I looked at the cheap tablet on the counter. I looked at the binder from the bank. I touched the pocket where the photo of the mystery woman was hidden. This wasn't a family squabble anymore. This was a siege. My mother wasn't just trying to cut me out of the money. She was trying to destroy my credibility before I could expose her. She knew I had the key. She knew I was getting close to the truth. And she was preparing to nuke my life to keep her secrets buried. I walked over to my desk. I opened my laptop. I created a new folder. I named it War Chest. I started typing. Date: December 14th. Event: meeting with Evelyn and Julian Sterling. Witnesses: David, Sarah. Key quotes: bloodlines. You do not belong in it. Offer: quid pro quo. Phone for signature. I logged the package. I took a picture of the cheap tablet and the receipt timestamp. I logged Mark's call. I was going to document every sneer, every bribe, every threat. She wanted a war? She wanted to talk about bloodlines? Fine. I was going to find out exactly whose blood ran in my veins, and then I was going to use it to burn her house of cards to the ground. The law office of Kincaid and Associates was located in Ashford County, a solid 45 minutes from the manicured, suffocating aesthetic of Briar Glen. I had chosen it deliberately. I needed a lawyer who did not play golf with my brother's father-in-law and who did not attend my mother's garden parties. I needed a stranger with a sharp mind and zero social debt to the Henderson family. Ms. Kincaid was a woman in her 60s with iron-gray hair cut into a severe bob and eyes that looked like they could spot a typo from across the room. She sat behind a desk made of reclaimed wood, her fingers drumming rhythmically on the binder I had retrieved from the safe deposit box. She had been reading in silence for 20 minutes. I sat in the leather chair opposite her, my hands folded in my lap, trying to keep my breathing even. The silence was heavy, but it was not the hostile silence of my mother's house. It was the silence of analysis. Finally, she closed the binder. She placed her hand flat on the cover. "You were right to come here." "Ms." Kincaid said. Her voice was gravelly and direct. She picked up the new document, the Hearthstone Community Fund administrative update that my mother had tried to bully me into signing. She held it up like it was a piece of rotting fruit. "They are calling this an administrative update," she said. "That is a very polite way of saying hostile takeover. Can you explain?" I asked. I knew it was bad, but I needed to know the mechanics. Currently, the trust your father established operates on a consensus model for the principal. She explained, "It means the trustee, your mother, Cannot liquidate major assets or change the beneficiary structure without the sign-off of the designated remainderman. You and your siblings, I nodded. This new document, she continued, tapping the paper, converts the trust into a discretionary model. It gives the primary trustee, your mother, sole and absolute authority to determine who gets what, when they get it, and if they get it at all. If you sign this, you are not just simplifying paperwork, you are handing her a loaded gun. She could drain the account into a charitable foundation of her choosing, or she could decide that one child gets $1 million and another gets a handshake. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. That is what she wants. She wants to be able to reward loyalty and punish dissent. Ms. Kincaid opened the binder again, flipping to a tab she had marked with a yellow sticky note. But here's the interesting part, she said, a small, grim smile touching her lips. Your father was a very thorough man. He anticipated this. She turned the document around so I could read it. It was the original trust agreement from 2012. She pointed to a paragraph in the middle of page 14. Clause 4B, non-discriminatory distribution. The trustee shall not use the distribution of benefits, whether principal or income, to enforce personal behavioral standards, coerce agreement on non-financial matters, or discriminate among beneficiaries of the same class. Any pattern of retaliatory distribution shall be grounds for immediate removal of the trustee. I stared at the words, retaliatory distribution. Does excluding a grandchild from a holiday gift count? I asked, on its own? Maybe not. Ms. Kincaid said, a court might view a phone as a trivial gift. However, she picked up the screenshot I had printed out. The text from my mother saying, it wouldn't be appropriate. Giving the phone could encourage questions. When you combine the exclusion with this message, and the subsequent demand for a signature, she said, leaning forward, it stops being a gift dispute. It becomes coercion. She is withholding a benefit from a beneficiary class, the grandchildren, to force a beneficiary, you, to sign a legal document. That is a breach of fiduciary duty. She sat back. If we file a petition, we can freeze the trust. We can demand a forensic accounting. And based on what I see in these bank transfer records your father saved, she has a lot to hide. I felt a surge of validation so strong it almost made me dizzy. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was right. What do I do? I asked. We fire a warning shot. Ms. Kincaid said, we do not file the lawsuit yet. We send a letter, a calm, professional, terrifying letter. We put her on notice that we know the rules, and we know she is breaking them. We spent the next hour drafting the email. Ms. Kincaid dictated, and I typed. We stripped away every ounce of emotion. We removed every I feel, and why are you doing this? We replaced them with please provide and pursuant to Clause 4B. When I walked out of her office, I felt like I was carrying a shield. I sent the email from my car in the parking lot. Subject: Trust inquiry and request for documents. Dear Mother, regarding the Hearthstone Community Fund updates you have asked me to sign, I am pausing all action until I have reviewed the current standing of the original trust. Please provide the following within 5 business days. 1. A written explanation for the exclusion of Maya from the holiday distribution on December 12th, citing the specific trust provisions that necessitated this decision. 2. Full copies of the current trust documents and accounting for the last 5 years. 3. Copies of all correspondence between yourself and Mr. Sterling regarding the proposed administrative changes. I am advising you that under Clause 4B of the founding document, using benefits to coerce signatures is a violation of the trustee's duty. I hope we can resolve this with transparency. Lillian. I hit send. The response came 3 hours later. I was in the kitchen, making a peanut butter sandwich for Maya. My phone pinged. I opened the email. It wasn't a list of documents. It was a manifesto. Lillian, I am sitting here in tears. I cannot believe you would speak to me like this. After all I have done, after I carried you, raised you, and supported you when your marriage fell apart, I feel completely attacked. You are weaponizing your daughter to gain leverage. You are using a simple misunderstanding about a telephone to try and destroy this family. I am trying to secure our future, and you are playing lawyer games. I am heartbroken that you have become this hard. Mr. Sterling is a friend. You are turning innocent advice into a conspiracy. If you want to see the books, fine, but do not expect me to welcome you with open arms when you are treating your own mother like a criminal. Mom, I read it twice. It was a masterclass in deflection. She ignored the request for the specific explanation. She ignored the citation of the clause. Instead, she painted herself as the martyr and me as the aggressor, weaponizing your daughter. The projection was so blinding it was almost funny. Then the flying monkeys arrived. My phone started buzzing with texts. First from Sarah. Mom is a wreck. She says you threatened to sue her? What is wrong with you? Then David. Lillian, stop making it weird. Just sign the damn papers. We can fix the phone thing later. Then, a text from Sarah again. 10 minutes later, the tone had shifted from angry to bargaining. Look, Lil, David and I talked. We get it. It sucks for Maya. Tell you what, we will chip in and buy Maya the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Same color, same storage. We will give it to you, and you can give it to her. Just drop the email stuff and sign the papers so Mom stops crying. I stared at the offer, a secret phone, a back alley deal to hush up the problem. If I took it, Maya would have the gadget. She would be equal in terms of hardware, and peace would return to the family. But Maya would know. She would know it didn't come from Grandma. She would know we had to sneak around to get it, and I would know that my price was $2,000. I realized then that if I accepted the phone, I was agreeing to the lie. I was agreeing that Maya was a problem to be solved, not a person to be loved. I typed back to Sarah. No. Maya does not need a charity phone from her aunt and uncle. She needs a grandmother who doesn't treat her like a second-class citizen. I am not signing anything until I get answers. I put the phone down. Maya walked into the kitchen. She was wearing her soccer jersey, looking for a snack. Mom? She asked. You look mad. I took a breath and forced my shoulders to drop. I am not mad at you. I said, I am just working on a hard problem. Is it about the phone? She asked. I looked at her. I couldn't lie, but I couldn't burden her with the legal warfare. It is about fairness, I said. Aunt Sarah offered to buy you the phone. Maya's eyes lit up for a second, then dimmed when she saw my face. But you said no? She guessed. I nodded. I did. Because if we take it, it means we are okay with how Grandma treated you. And I am not okay with it. I would rather buy you a phone myself, with our own money, than take one that is meant to shut us up. Maya thought about this. She chewed on her lip. It is okay. Mom, she said finally, I do not want a pity phone anyway. She hugged me around the waist. Her head reached my chest. She was getting so tall. Respect is better than stuff. I whispered into her hair. Yeah, she said, but stuff is cool too. I laughed. It broke the tension. You are right. Stuff is cool. We will get you a phone when we can. A real one. From us. That evening, I got a message from a number I didn't save in my contacts. It was my cousin Becca. Becca was 33. Like me. She was my mother's sister's daughter. We had grown up together, but we had drifted apart as adults. Becca was quiet, observant, and hated conflict. She usually stayed on the periphery of family gatherings, nursing a glass of wine and saying very little. Hey Lil. The text read, I know you are in the middle of World War III with Aunt Evelyn. I don't want to get involved, but I heard something at the dinner before you got there. I think you should know. I called her immediately. Becca? I said. Hey, she whispered. She sounded like she was hiding in a closet. Look, I cannot be on the record. My mom would kill me. I promise. I said, just tell me. Okay, she said. So, before you arrived, Mr. Sterling and your mom were in the solarium. They didn't see me. I was looking for a charger. What did they say? Your mom was freaking out, Becca said. She was pacing. She said, and this is a direct quote. She said, we have to hold the line on the gift. If that child gets it, She will start asking about the summer house photos. I froze. The summer house photos? I repeated. Yeah, Becca said. And then Sterling said, We have scrubbed the digital footprint. Evelyn, do not worry. And your mom said, Digital is not the problem. It is the physical memory. The child looks too much like her. Becca paused. Like who? I asked. Like me? I don't know. Becca said, but she sounded scared. Lil, like, really scared. I just thought you should know. It is not about the phone. It is about something else. Thanks. Becca, I said. Seriously. I hung up. The summer house. My mind raced back through the years. We had gone to a lake house when I was a kid. Marrow Lake. My parents had rented it every July for 3 years straight when I was around 5, 6, and 7. Then, suddenly, we stopped going. My mother claimed the damp air was bad for her allergies. I closed my eyes, trying to access the memory. It was hazy. I remembered the smell of pine needles and damp earth. I remembered a dock with splintered wood, and I remembered feeling pushed aside. I had a flash of a memory, sitting in a bedroom with floral wallpaper, being told to stay inside because Daddy has business. I remembered looking out the window and seeing my father on the dock. But he wasn't alone. There was a woman, the woman from the photo in the safe deposit box. The connection slammed into me. The photo, the summer house, the fear. If that child gets it, she will start asking about the summer house photos. What photos? Was there an album? A collection? And why would Maya getting an iPhone lead her to ask about them? Unless the photos were on a cloud, or a shared drive, or somewhere that a new family device might auto-sync to if it was set up by the family administrator. My mother was terrified that if Maya got a device linked to the family ecosystem, she might stumble upon a folder that hadn't been deleted properly. I grabbed my car keys. I need to go out for a bit. I told the babysitter, who was still on standby from the chaotic week. I will be back in 2 hours. I drove to Marrow Lake. It was dark when I arrived. The town was a seasonal community, quiet in the winter. The lake was a black void reflecting the few streetlights that lined the shore. I didn't know the exact address of the rental house, but I remembered the neighborhood, Pine Cove Lane. I drove slowly down the narrow road. The houses were shuttered for the season, dark and silent, except for one. A small cottage at the end of the lane had a light on in the kitchen window. I parked the car. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to be near the place. I walked toward the water. The wind was biting, cold and sharp. I stood on the edge of the public boat launch, looking at the row of docks. Can I help you? I jumped. An elderly woman was standing on her porch, wrapped in a thick wool cardigan, holding a small dog. She was squinting at me. I am sorry. I said, I used to come here as a kid. I was just reminiscing. The woman stepped off the porch. She walked closer, peering at me under the streetlight. Her face was a map of wrinkles. Her eyes sharp and blue. She tilted her head. You are Robert's girl, aren't you? She said. I stopped breathing. Yes, I said. I am Lillian. Robert Henderson was my father. I knew it. She cackled softly. You have got his chin and his walk. She looked me up and down. I haven't seen you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper. She said, I am Mrs. Gable. I live in the year-round cabin next to the one your folks used to rent. Mrs. Gable. I said, I think I remember you. Did you used to bake cookies? Molasses snaps. She said, That is right. She stepped closer, her expression softening. I was sorry to hear about your dad. She said, He was a good man, a complicated man, but good. Thank you. I said. She looked at me again, her gaze lingering on my face. You look just like him, she said. It is uncanny. Then she lowered her voice, as if sharing a secret. Though your mother always hated when people said that. Why? I asked. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. Oh, you know Evelyn, Mrs. Gable said, waving a hand. She wanted everything to be about her side, the proper side. She used to get so prickly when people mentioned the resemblance, especially, well, especially when she was around. She? I asked. Who is she? Mrs. Gable paused. She looked at me, realizing she might have stepped onto a landmine. Oh, she said, the friend, the woman who visited, the woman in the sundress. I said, curly hair? Mrs. Gable's eyes widened. So you know her? I don't, I said, but I have seen a photo. Who was she? Mrs. Gable? The old woman sighed. She looked out at the dark lake. I never got her name. She said, but she was here a lot those summers. When your mother went back to the city for her appointments, this woman would come up. She and your dad. They would sit on the dock for hours, just talking, sometimes holding hands. She looked back at me. She brought a baby with her once. Mrs. Gable said, the world stopped spinning. A baby? I whispered. Yeah, Mrs. Gable said. A little thing, maybe a year old. She squinted at me again. Come to think of it, Mrs. Gable said slowly, that baby had a birthmark, a little red splotch on its leg. Just like you had when you were running around in your swimsuit. I felt like the ground had opened up and swallowed me whole. The baby in the photo, the baby with the birthmark. It was me. But the woman holding me wasn't my mother, and Mrs. Gable had just confirmed that the woman brought the baby to the lake to see my father, which meant I wasn't just visiting the lake with my parents. I was being brought to visit my father by the woman. My mother, Evelyn, wasn't the woman in the photo. And if Mrs. Gable was right, and the woman brought me to see Robert, Evelyn wasn't my mother. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I grabbed the railing of the boat launch to steady myself. The coldness, the bloodlines comment, the way she had always treated me like an accessory she couldn't quite style correctly. You have a complicated history. You do not belong in it. I was Robert's daughter. That was why I looked like him. But I wasn't Evelyn's. I was the daughter of the woman in the sundress, the woman my father loved at the lake house, and Evelyn had adopted me, or taken me, or... My mind reeled. The narrative, the secrets. My mother, Evelyn, had spent 33 years pretending I was hers, molding me, criticizing me, trying to force me into her image. And now, she was terrified that if Maya got too close to the truth, if Maya saw a photo of the other woman and asked, "Who is that?" the whole lie would collapse. Mrs. Gable was watching me with concern. "Honey," she said, "you look like you have seen a ghost." "I have, Mrs. Gable," I whispered. "I think I just did." I thanked her, stumbled back to my car, and locked the doors. I sat in the dark, shivering uncontrollably. It all made sense. The cruelty wasn't random. It was resentment. I was the living proof of her husband's betrayal, or perhaps his greatest love, and she had been forced to raise me to keep up appearances. She didn't hate Maya because Maya was difficult. She hated Maya because Maya was the second generation of the woman she couldn't erase. I looked at my face in the rearview mirror. I traced the line of my jaw. Robert's chin. I wasn't fighting for acceptance anymore. I wasn't fighting for a place at Evelyn's table. I was fighting a kidnapper. I started the car. I didn't cry. I was past tears. I felt a cold, hard clarity settling in my chest, replacing the panic. I drove back to Briar Glen. I went into my apartment. I walked to the war chest folder on my laptop. I added a new entry. Date: December 16th. Location: Marrow Lake. Witness: Mrs. Gable. Fact: the woman in the photo visited Robert Henderson with a baby. The baby was me. Hypothesis: Evelyn is not my biological mother. I closed the laptop. I wasn't going to ask her. I wasn't going to give her the chance to lie. I was going to prove it. I needed a DNA test, and I needed the rest of those bank records. Because if Evelyn had adopted me, or if she had simply taken me in to hide a scandal, there was a paper trail. And if she had used the trust money to pay off my biological mother, that was illegal. That was trafficking. That was fraud. I looked at the sleeping form of my daughter on the baby monitor. They thought they could buy us off with a phone. They thought they could scare us with a lawyer. They had no idea what they had just woken up. I was done chasing love from a woman who viewed me as a liability. I was going to find my real mother, and I was going to take every single penny that Robert Henderson had left for his real family. I sat in the dark, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the black sheep. I felt like the wolf. Ms. Kincaid called me on a Tuesday morning, her voice sharp and devoid of pleasantries. "I have looked into Mr. Sterling," she said. I sat up straighter in my office chair at the library, pressing the phone against my ear. The stacks of archived periodicals in front of me suddenly seemed very trivial. "And?" I asked. "He is not an independent advisor," she said. "He is a partner at a boutique firm called Sterling and Holt. They specialize in high net worth asset protection, specifically for clients looking to move liquid capital into shielded trusts. But here's the interesting part." I waited. "His firm has been on a retainer for your brother's construction company for 3 years, she said, "and they handled a real estate transaction for your mother last spring, the sale of a commercial lot in downtown Briar Glen. Did you know she sold that?" "No," I said. I felt a cold prickle of anger. She told me she was cash poor. She said the maintenance on the house was eating her alive. She sold it for $400,000. "Ms. Kincaid said, "and the proceeds went straight into the Hearthstone Fund, the same fund she wants you to sign over to her. It wasn't just mismanagement, it was a coordinated effort. David and my mother were using Sterling to consolidate everything before I even knew the money existed. They weren't just cutting me out of the future, they were erasing the present." "This is a setup," I said. "It is a strategy." "Ms. Kincaid corrected, "and it is not illegal on its face, but it proves coordination. They are moving assets to a place where you cannot touch them, and they are using the new signature requirement to lock the gate behind them." I hung up the phone and stared at the wall. My brother had looked me in the eye and told me to stop causing drama, all while he was helping her hide nearly $500,000. When I got home that evening, there was a certified letter waiting for me. The envelope was thick, heavy, and official. The return address was a law firm I didn't recognize in the city. I signed for it, my hand steady. I poured a glass of water before I opened it. "Dear Ms. Henderson, we represent Evelyn Henderson. It has come to our attention that you have been engaging in a pattern of harassment against our client, including aggressive digital communications, unfounded accusations of fiduciary misconduct, and behavior that has caused significant emotional distress. Our client desires peace. However, if you continue to make disparaging remarks regarding the family trust or attempt to weaponize family gatherings for personal leverage, we will be forced to pursue all available legal remedies, including a restraining order. All future communication regarding the estate must be directed to this office. Do not contact our client directly." I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound that frightened the cat. Harassment. I had sent one email, one polite, legally grounded email asking for documents I was entitled to see. My mother had taken that email, wrapped it in her victimhood, and handed it to a lawyer to turn into a weapon. She was trying to scare me. She wanted me to think that asking questions was illegal. She was trying to make me look unstable. The crazy daughter, harassing her poor, elderly mother. I put the letter in the war chest folder, but the war didn't stay in the folder. 2 days later, it followed me to work. My supervisor, a kind but rule-oriented woman named Patricia, called me into her office. She looked uncomfortable. She kept shifting the papers on her desk. "Lillian," she said, "we received a complaint." My heart hammered against my ribs. A complaint? About my work? Not exactly. Patricia said, "It was vague. It was an anonymous email sent to the library board. It raised concerns about your financial stability and your professional conduct." "What?" I asked. The room felt like it was tilting. "It claimed that you were leveraging your position to access private records," she said, reading from a printout, "and that you were involved in a contentious family dispute that might spill over into the workplace." I stared at her. "Patricia," I said, "that is a lie. I have never used library resources for personal matters, and my family life has nothing to do with my ability to catalog historical documents. I know, she said, softening. I know, Lillian, and honestly, the email reads like a personal vendetta. It did not cite a single specific incident. We are not taking action, but I had to tell you, it is in your file now. I walked out of her office feeling like I had been stripped naked. They had called my job, my mother, or David, or Sterling. Someone had taken the time to find the email address of the library board and plant a seed of doubt. They wanted to destabilize me. They wanted me to be afraid that if I kept pushing, I would lose everything. They wanted me to be the broke, unemployed single mother they always treated me like. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. You want me to break? I thought, looking at my reflection. You want me to call you crying and beg for it to stop? I dried my face with a rough paper towel. Not today, that Friday. I sat Maya down on the sofa. I had made hot chocolate, heavy on the marshmallows. I wanted this to be a soft conversation, even though the subject was hard. Hey, Bug, I said, we need to talk about the holidays. Maya looked up over her mug. Are we going to Grandma's? Not for a while. I said. I saw her face fall. Just a fraction. She loved the big house. She loved the cookies. She didn't understand the invisible wires that were strung across the rooms, waiting to trip us. Is she still mad about the phone? Maya asked. It is not just the phone, I said carefully. Grandma and I are trying to figure out how to talk to each other nicely. And right now, we are not doing a very good job. So, for peace, we are going to take a break. For peace, she repeated. Yes, I said. Sometimes, the best way to love people is to give them space. So, instead of the big dinner next week, you and I are going to do something better. We are going to go to the city, just us. We will go to the museum, and we will eat pizza in the hotel bed. Maya grinned. Room service? Whatever you want, I said. She took a sip of her cocoa. She seemed okay with it. But then she set the mug down and looked at me with serious eyes. That is good, she said. Why is that good? I asked. Because sometimes Grandma says things. She said. My stomach tightened. What kind of things? Just secrets, Maya said, shrugging. Like last time, when I was helping her with the napkins. She told me I was a good helper. Better than you. I froze. She said that? Maya nodded. She said you are distracted, and that I should be a good girl and listen to her. And then she said, Don't tell Mommy what you heard in the hallway. I moved from the chair to the sofa. Sitting next to her, I kept my voice calm, but my blood was boiling. What did you hear in the hallway? Maya? I don't know, she said. I was just walking to the bathroom. Grandma was on the phone. She was talking to Uncle David. What did she say? She said, We have to lock it down before she finds the paper. Maya looked at me. I didn't know what paper. I thought maybe she meant a wrapping paper, but she looked really mad when she saw me. That is when she told me not to tell you. I pulled Maya into a hug. I held her tight, resting my chin on her head so she wouldn't see the look on my face. We have to lock it down before she finds the paper. She was grooming my daughter to keep secrets from me. She was planting wedges between us, teaching Maya that loyalty to Grandma meant lying to Mom. That was it. That was the line. They could steal the money. They could call my boss. But they could not recruit my child into their conspiracy. I kissed the top of Maya's head. You did the right thing telling me, I said. We do not keep secrets like that. I put Maya to bed early. Then I called Mr. Abernathy, the retired attorney. He answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting by the phone. I need to know. I said, I didn't say hello. I need to know why she is so afraid of the transparency. Lillian, he rasped. I found out about the summer house. I said, I found out about the woman. I know she isn't my mother. The silence on the line was heavy. You figured it out, he said softly. But that is not enough, I said. Being adopted isn't a crime. Hiding it is cruel. But it doesn't explain the financial aggression. It doesn't explain why she is trying to destroy my life right now. It is not just about the adoption. Lillian, Mr. Abernathy said, it is about the conditions. What conditions? Your father wanted to set up a specific education fund for your children. He said, this was back in 2005. Before you were even married. He wanted to create a separate trust, specifically for your issue. He wanted to ensure that no matter what happened with Evelyn, your children would have the same standing as David's or Sarah's. And Evelyn fought it. He said, violently, not physically, but socially. She threatened to leave him. She threatened to expose certain indiscretions. She refused to allow any document that legally codified your children as equal heirs to the main estate. Why? I asked. Because if she acknowledged them as equal heirs in a legal document, she would lose the ability to control the narrative. He said, she wanted the power to grant favor. She wanted to be the gatekeeper. If the money was automatic, she couldn't use it to make you, and them, comply. I closed my eyes. The phone exclusion. It wasn't just a snub. It was the manifestation of a 20-year-old battle. It was her saying, I won. Robert is dead, and I decide who gets the gold. She is terrified. Mr. Abernathy continued, that if your daughter feels equal, she will feel safe. And if she feels safe, she will start asking questions, and Evelyn cannot afford questions, because the paper trail of how she moved the money to hide it from your father, that is what she is really hiding, the theft, I said. She moved assets to ensure the real grandchildren got the bulk. He said, if you trigger a forensic accounting, you will find it, and she knows it. Thank you. Arthur? I said. I hung up. I sat in the dark for a long time. They wanted to play hardball? They wanted to send certified letters and file anonymous complaints? Fine. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to send another email. I was going to look her in the eye. I spent the next morning organizing. I rented a small conference room at the Cedar Brook Community Center. It was a neutral, beige room with fluorescent lights and no history, no family portraits, no matching napkins. I sent a group text to my mother, David, and Sarah. We are meeting. Sunday at 2. Cedar Brook Community Center. Room B. My attorney will be present. If you want to stop the legal escalation, you will be there. They didn't want to come. I knew that. But the mention of the attorney, and the implied threat of what would happen if they didn't, forced their hand. On Sunday, I arrived 20 minutes early. Ms. Kincaid was already there, looking formidable in a navy suit. We sat on one side of the metal table. I placed my binder in front of me. At 2 o'clock, the door opened. My mother walked in. She was wearing black, as if she were mourning the death of her patients. She looked haggard. The stress was eating at her. David followed, looking angry. Sarah trailed behind, looking terrified. Mr. Sterling was not there. Good. Ms. Kincaid whispered to me. They know he is a liability now. They sat down opposite us. The silence was thick enough to choke on. This is ridiculous. David started. We shouldn't be here. We should be at the house. We are here because I do not feel safe at the house. I said. My voice was calm. It didn't shake. My mother let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. Safe? Oh, Lillian, you are so dramatic. I opened the binder. I am going to ask one question. I said, and I want an answer. The real answer. I looked at my mother. What were you trying to make me sign? And why did you use my child to do it? My mother stared at me. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. I was trying to simplify the estate, she said, her voice wobbling. I was trying to make sure everyone was taken care of. And you? You twisted it. You turned a gift exchange into a war. No, I said. I slid a piece of paper across the table. It was the timeline I had created. December 12th. You exclude Maya from the gift distribution. December 12th. You slip a note in my pocket demanding a signature. December 14th. You threaten to withhold future benefits if I don't sign. December 15th. Your advisor offers a quid pro quo. December 18th. You send a cease and desist letter to your own daughter. December 20th. An anonymous complaint is filed at my workplace. I looked up. This isn't a misunderstanding. Mother, this is a campaign. You are trying to break me. David leaned forward. You are paranoid. Lillian, nobody called your work. You are just screwing up and looking for someone to blame. I ignored him. I kept my eyes on my mother. You used a 10-year-old girl as leverage. I said, you humiliated her to soften me up. And when that didn't work, you tried to buy her off with a phone provided I signed a non-disclosure agreement. I slid the next document across the table. It was the copy of the original trust, with Clause 4.b highlighted in neon yellow. This is the clause you are violating. I said, no trustee shall use the distribution of benefits to coerce agreement on non-financial matters. My mother looked at the paper. She didn't touch it. I am the trustee, she snapped. I decide what is coercion. I decide what is appropriate. Not if you are removed, Ms. Kincaid said. Her voice was low, but it cut through the room like a knife. My mother's head snapped toward the lawyer. If we file a petition for removal based on breach of fiduciary duty, Ms. Kincaid said, the court will appoint an independent forensic accountant to review every transaction from the last 10 years. My mother went pale. David shifted in his seat. An audit? That is insane. It would drain the trust. It would reveal the truth. I said, I reached into the binder and pulled out the copy of the bank transfer from 2012, the one showing $50,000 moving from the joint account to a private holding company. I know you moved the money. Mom, I said. The room went dead silent. The hum of the vending machine in the hallway sounded like a jet engine. I know you have been siphoning assets for years, I continued. I know you and David have been restructuring the portfolio to benefit yourselves. And I know that the administrative update was just a way to bury the bodies so I couldn't find them. My mother was shaking. Her hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. You have no right, she whispered. You have no right to dig through my life. I have every right. I said, I am a beneficiary, and I am a mother. I leaned forward. I am prepared to file the petition tomorrow morning. I said, I will freeze the assets. I will subpoena Mr. Sterling. I will bring every single text message and email into open court. Sarah started to cry softly. Mom, just tell her. Shut up, my mother hissed at Sarah. She looked back at me. Her eyes were filled with a hatred so pure it was almost breathtaking. You would destroy this family over a phone? She spat. I am not destroying the family. I said, you did that when you decided Maya didn't count. I reached into the binder one last time. I didn't pull out the document. I just touched the edge of the envelope that held the letter from my father and the key to the safe deposit box. I know why you did it, I said softly. My mother froze. I know about the summer house, I said. Her face crumbled. It wasn't sadness, it was terror. She looked at David, then back at me. She looked like a trapped animal. I know what you're hiding, I said, and I know why you don't want Maya to feel like she belongs. Because every time you look at her, you see the truth you have been trying to erase for 30 years. I stood up. Ms. Kincaid stood with me. You have 24 hours, I said. I want a full written accounting of the trust. I want the resignation of the current trustee. And I want a formal apology to my daughter. If I do not get those 3 things, I file the papers, and I release the history. I didn't wait for an answer. I turned and walked out of the beige room. I walked down the hallway, my heels clicking on the linoleum. I felt light. I felt clean. I had dropped the bomb. Now, all I had to do was watch where the dust settled. But as I reached the exit doors, I heard a sound behind me. Lillian! It was my mother. She had followed me into the hallway. She was alone. I turned around. She stood there, small and trembling in the harsh fluorescent light. You cannot do this, she whispered. You cannot tell people. Tell people what? I asked. That you stole from the trust? No, she said. She took a step closer. Her voice dropped to a desperate hiss. You cannot tell them about her. She looked at me, her eyes searching my face, seeing the ghost of the woman she hated. It would kill me. Lillian. The scandal. It would kill me. I looked at this woman who had bullied my daughter, lied to my face, and tried to ruin my career. I looked at her fear, and I felt absolutely nothing. The truth matters more than comfort, I said. I pushed open the door and walked out into the cold winter air. The wind outside the Cedar Brook Community Center was biting, but inside the beige conference room, the air was stagnant, heavy with 30 years of unsaid things. I stood by the door, my hand still on the crash bar, looking back at the woman who had raised me, the woman who had just whispered that the truth would kill her. I walked back to the table. I did not sit down. If you want to protect yourself from a scandal— Mother, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the hollow room, then you need to stop lying, right now. My mother, Evelyn, looked at me with eyes that were red-rimmed and darting. She looked small, stripped of the grandeur of her dining room table and her curated aesthetic. She looked like what she was, a frightened woman backed into a corner by her own machinations. She gripped the back of a plastic chair. I did it to protect her, she said. Her voice was thin, shaking. I excluded Maya to protect her. Protect her from what? I asked. From a phone? From the confusion, she cried out, her voice rising to a jagged peak. From the questions. You think you want the truth, Lillian, but you don't. The truth always ruins families. It tears them apart. I was trying to keep the lid on. I was trying to keep everyone in their lane so we could just be what? I asked. A lie? Ms. Kincaid cleared her throat. She didn't look up from her notepad, but her presence was a granite wall in the room. Ms. Henderson, she said, addressing my mother, I must advise you. Continued assertions that you are withholding benefits to manage family narratives or protect beneficiaries from information can be interpreted as coercive control. If you are admitting that the exclusion was strategic, you are admitting to a breach of the trust's non-discrimination clause. My mother spun on her heel to face the lawyer. I am not admitting to anything, she snapped. I am telling you that I have the right to manage this family. If Lillian cannot get in line, if she insists on digging up the past, then I will cut her out completely. She pointed a trembling finger at me. I will revoke your standing, she hissed. I will rewrite the will. You won't see a dime. Not you, and not that child. I looked at her finger. It was shaking violently. You cannot revoke my standing in the irrevocable trust. I said calmly, Dad made sure of that, and you cannot cut me out of a family I never really belonged to in the first place. I reached into the binder. I had one card left to play. I pulled out a stapled packet of emails. The paper was yellowed at the edges. You talk about protecting the family, I said, but Dad didn't seem to think you were protecting anything. He thought you were looting. I slid the packet across the table. It landed in front of David. Read it, I said. David looked at me, then at the paper. He hesitated. Read it. David, I commanded. He picked it up. His eyes scanned the top page. It was an email from my father to his accountant, dated 3 months before he died. Subject: Asset migration concerns. David read the text, his lips moving silently. Then he stopped. His face went gray. Read it out loud. I said. David swallowed hard. He looked at our mother, who was staring at him with wide, terrified eyes. Robert writes. David's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. Robert writes, I am seeing transfers to the Hearthstone entity that I did not authorize. Evelyn claims these are for maintenance, but the amounts are inconsistent with overhead. I am concerned she is moving capital to shield it from the general pool. If this continues, I will need to amend the trusteeship to require dual signature authority immediately. The room went silent. Dad knew. I said, he caught you moving the money, and he was going to stop you. But then he got sick, and he died before he could file the amendment. I looked at my mother. You didn't just steal from us, I said. You stole from him while he was dying. My mother let out a sob. It wasn't a cry of remorse. It was the sound of a dam breaking. I had to, she wailed. I had to secure it. Why? I asked. Why did you need to hide $500,000? She didn't answer. She just wept, her face buried in her hands. But the silence was filled by a different sound. A chair scraping against the floor. It was Sarah. My sister was crying too. She had her hands pressed over her mouth, looking at the email in David's hand. I didn't know about the stealing. She whispered. We looked at her. I didn't know she took it from Dad. Sarah said, looking at me. Her mascara was running down her cheeks, but... Lillian, I have to tell you. Sarah, David barked. Shut up. No, Sarah shouted, standing up. I am done. This is too much. She turned to me, her hands shaking. Mom promised me a lump sum. She said. I stared at her. What? She promised me $50,000. Sarah sobbed. From the Hearthstone Fund. She said if I helped convince you to sign the updates, if I helped keep the peace, she would release it to me next month. My stomach turned. And David? I asked. Sarah looked at our brother. David looked away. His jaw clenched. David was getting more. Sarah whispered. He was getting the deed to the commercial lot. I looked at them. My siblings. The people I had played tag with. The people I had shared Christmas mornings with. They weren't just bystanders. They were mercenaries. So that is why you told me to stop causing drama. I said to David, not because you cared about the family peace, but because my signature was the key to your payout. David slammed his hand on the table. It is not like that, he yelled. Mom said the money was locked up. She said your refusal to sign was freezing everything. We have expenses. Lillian, we have mortgages. We were just trying to get what was ours. By selling out my daughter? I asked. David didn't answer. He looked down at the table, defeated. I turned back to my mother. She had stopped crying. She was staring at me with a look of cold, hard calculation. The mask was gone. There was no more poor grandmother. There was only the strategist who had lost control of the board. It wasn't just the money. Was it? I asked. I touched the pocket where I kept the photo of the woman at the lake. You wanted full control because of the property. I said. My mother flinched. The lake house. I said, the one in Marrow Lake, the one Dad loved. You shut your mouth, she whispered. You wanted to sell it. I said, that is why you needed the sole discretion. The current trust requires consensus to sell real estate, and you knew I would never agree to sell it, because you knew I would figure out why you wanted it gone. She wanted to sell it to erase her. I realized. She wanted to bulldoze the cottage where my father had been happy with someone else. She wanted to liquidate the memory. Yes, my mother screamed. She slammed her hands on the table. Startling Ms. Kincaid. Yes, I wanted to sell it. I hate that place. I hate every rotting board of that dock. She glared at me, her eyes wild. You think you are so special. Lillian, you think you are the victim. You have no idea what it was like. To raise you. To look at your face every day and see her. The confirmation hit me like a physical blow, but I didn't stumble. She isn't my mother. I said, Evelyn isn't my mother. Who? Sarah asked, confused. Who isn't your mother? She pointed at me. She is exactly like him, my mother spat. Robert brought you home like a stray puppy. We have to take her, Evelyn. We have to raise her. He made me promise. He made me pretend. For 33 years, I have pretended. She laughed, a harsh, jagged sound, and then your daughter comes along. And she looks just like you. And every time I see her, I see the betrayal all over again. I see the woman who ruined my marriage standing in my living room, asking for cookies. She leaned over the table. So yes, I excluded her. I didn't want to give her a phone. I didn't want to give her anything. I wanted to remind you that you are guests in this family. You are here on my charity. The room was silent, absolutely silent. Sarah was gaping at me. David looked sick. I looked at the woman I had called Mom for my entire life. I felt a strange, cool sense of relief. It wasn't me. All those years of feeling wrong, of feeling like I was too loud, too emotional, too different, All those years of trying to twist myself into a shape that would please her. It wasn't because I was broken. It was because I was the wrong puzzle piece. "Thank you," I said quietly. My mother blinked. She looked confused by my reaction. She had wanted to hurt me. She had wanted to crush me. "Thank you for finally saying it," I said. I looked at Ms. Kincaid. "We have the admission," I said. "She just admitted to discriminatory administration of the trust based on personal animus. She admitted to mingling assets, and we have witness testimony of bribery to the other beneficiaries." Ms. Kincaid nodded. "It is more than enough for removal," she said, "and for a surcharge action to recover the stolen funds." My mother's face went white. "Lillian, wait," David said, standing up. "Let us not do this in court. If we go to court, the whole town will know. The business." I looked at David. "I do not care about your business. David, you sold me out for a plot of land." I turned to my mother. "Here is what is going to happen," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I spoke with the voice of Robert Henderson's daughter. "You are going to resign as trustee, effective immediately. You are going to sign the paperwork Misty Kincaid sends you tomorrow." My mother shook her head. "I won't." "If you don't," I said, "I will file the petition, and I will include the paternity test I'm going to take, and I will include the testimony of Mrs. Gable from the lake house, and I will make sure that every single person in Briar Glen knows that the impeccable Evelyn Henderson has been living a lie for 3 decades. My mother froze. The threat of social ruin was the only gun she respected. "And," I continued, "you are going to pay back the $50,000 you moved in 2012, with interest." She looked at me with pure loathing. "And what about the girl?" she sneered. "What about Maya? You think this helps her?" I smiled. It was a cold smile. "Maya is going to be fine," I said, "because she is going to have a mother who actually loves her." I gathered my binder. I checked my phone. I picked up my purse. "You do not get access to my daughter anymore," I said, "not until you can look at her without seeing a ghost. And since we both know that will never happen. Goodbye, Evelyn." I turned to my siblings. "You two have a choice," I said. "You can keep enabling her and lose me forever, or you can wake up. But do not call me until you have decided." I walked out. I didn't look back. I walked out of the community center, into the parking lot, and got into my car. I sat there for a moment, listening to the engine hum. I was an orphan, and I was free. The fallout was not neat. Real life rarely is. My mother resigned as trustee 3 days later. She claimed health reasons in the official announcement, maintaining her facade to the bitter end. An independent fiduciary was appointed to manage the trust, a cold, impartial bank officer who didn't care about matching napkins or family secrets. The forensic accounting revealed that she had spent nearly $60,000 of trust money on consulting fees to Sterling's firm, money that was essentially being laundered back to her through complex real estate schemes. It took months to unwind. Sarah called me a week later. She apologized. She cried for an hour. She said she was broke and desperate and had let Mom get in her head. We are talking, but it is slow. Trust is like a mirror. You can fix it if it breaks, but you can still see the crack in your mother's reflection. David didn't apologize. He sent a text saying I had overreacted and that I was ungrateful. I blocked his number. Maya took the news about the break from Grandma better than I expected. Kids know when they are not wanted. The tension she had felt in that house had been a weight she didn't realize she was carrying until it was gone. We started our own traditions. We had pancake Sundays, where we made a mess of the kitchen. We went to the lake, not the rental house, but a public beach on the other side, and skipped stones. I took a DNA test. It confirmed what I knew. I had no genetic match to Evelyn. I found a second cousin on my father's side who told me stories about a woman named Elena, an artist who had loved my father but couldn't stay in the suffocating orbit of his life. She had died when I was 2. That was when Robert brought me home. I had a name, Elena. I put her photo, the one from the safe deposit box, in a frame on my dresser. Life settled into a new rhythm. It was quieter, smaller, but it was honest. Then, 3 weeks after the confrontation, a package arrived. It was sitting on my doorstep when I got home from work. It was a small, brown cardboard box. No return address. I brought it inside. I used a kitchen knife to slice the tape. I opened the flaps. Inside was a white box. Sleek, heavy, sealed in plastic. An iPhone 17 Pro Max. I stared at it. There was no note, no apology, no card, just a receipt stapled to the side of the box. I unfolded the thermal paper. I looked at the date, December 11th, the day before the dinner. I looked at the itemized list. iPhone 17 Pro Max, titanium, quantity, 4. Subtotal, $7,996. She had bought 4 phones. She had bought one for Leo, one for Sam, one for Chloe, and one for Maya. She had stood at the counter in the Apple store and bought 4 phones. She had planned to give them all, but then she didn't. She had wrapped 3, and she had kept this one. Why? I looked at the timestamp on the receipt. 4:12 p.m. I remembered a phone call I had with her that afternoon, December 11th, around 5 o'clock. She had called to confirm the time for dinner, and I had mentioned, casually, that Maya had asked about the lake house again. She asked if we could go see where Grandpa used to fish. I had said, just curious. That was it. That was the trigger. My mother had hung up the phone. She had looked at the 4 boxes, and she had decided that Maya was getting too close. The resemblance, the questions, the memory, it was too much. So she took Maya's phone and put it in a drawer. She didn't exclude Maya because she was cheap. She didn't exclude her because of screen time. She excluded her to punish her for asking the wrong question. She excluded her to assert dominance. You do not get to ask about the past. You do not get to be part of the future. She had the phone the whole time. She had watched my daughter's face crumble, watched her hold back tears, watched her apologize for existing, all while the 4th phone was sitting in a cupboard 10 feet away. It was a cruelty so specific, so premeditated, that it took my breath away. And now, she had mailed it to me. Why? To say she was sorry? No. Evelyn didn't do sorry. She sent it to say, I bought it. I could have given it to her. I chose not to. It was one last twist of the knife, one last reminder that she had held the power. I looked at the box. Mom? Maya walked into the kitchen. She had her backpack slung over one shoulder. What is that? She asked. I looked at the iPhone, the most coveted object in her middle school, the thing that had started the war. I looked at my daughter. She was happy. She was safe. She was loved. It is a mistake. I said, I picked up the box. It is just a return I have to make. You want it? Maya asked, eyeing the white packaging. No, I said, we do not need it. I walked to the trash can. I didn't throw it away. That would be wasteful. And I was still a single mother on a budget, but I didn't give it to her. Not this one. This one was cursed. I will take it back to the store. I told her. And then, we are going to go to the mall, and we are going to buy you a phone, a brand new one, with our money. Maya smiled. A real smile. Cool, she said. Can we get pretzels too? Yes. I said, we can get pretzels. I put the box in my purse. I would return it. I would take the $2,000 cash, and I would put it in a savings account for Maya. I would label the account the Elena Fund. I grabbed my keys. Ready? I asked. Ready, Maya said. We walked out the door, leaving the silence of the apartment behind us. The air outside was cold, but the sun was shining. I held my daughter's hand. We walked toward the car. I didn't look back at the empty space where my mother used to be. I looked forward. There were no more secrets, no more conditions, no more waiting for permission to belong. We were our own family now. And that was the only truth that mattered. Thank you so much for listening to Lillian's story. It was a journey through the tangled webs of family secrets, betrayal, and the hard fight for dignity. I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced a family dynamic where gifts were used as weapons? Do you think Lillian made the right choice in cutting ties? Or was there another way? Please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more emotional, realistic dramas about people taking back their power. Share your thoughts in English below. Until next time.